Three men try to shift a massive tree trunk, but the weight suddenly moves in the opposite direction. Vertical timber holds immense hidden weight. Human strength offers no practical way to control thousands of pounds of shifting timber. At an outdoor training facility, a climber transfers her weight onto a rappel line when the safety connection snaps under tension. Relying on mechanical fall protection demands absolute equipment integrity. When physical weight transfers entirely to a defective tether, the securing fibers give way instantly under sudden tension. Gravity immediately influences the descent the moment this vital connection breaks. A person descending unexpectedly accelerates rapidly, leaving very little time to reach a stable surface. Inspect every single load-bearing strap thoroughly before leaving the ground. Connect a strong, redundant backup line to a separate solid anchor. Test your gear at a low height to help ensure your safety. Inside a large storage warehouse, workers guide a bundle of steel bars as the massive lifting structure detaches from above. Massive overhead structures rely on strong mounting systems to remain secured above. When structural fatigue weakens these vital connection points, the heavy framework loses support instantly. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling tons of solid steel downward in an uncontrolled descent. This structural failure creates a large danger zone across the floor. Anyone standing below this sudden heavy movement faces a significant safety risk. Maintain a wide physical distance from active overhead lifting areas during daily operation. Inspect ceiling mounts and mechanical joints thoroughly before elevating heavy material. At a snowy construction yard, a man works atop a yellow compressor beneath an excavator before the operator unintentionally lowers the digging arm. Human error inside a control cabin turns massive equipment into an immediate danger. When a driver accidentally hits the wrong lever, tons of solid steel descend instantly. Gravity accelerates the digging bucket without warning, leaving very little opportunity to move to a safer location. A person has very little natural protection against this sudden mechanical contact. Lock out all hydraulic controls completely while people stand nearby. Verify your immediate space is entirely empty before touching sensitive joysticks. Step far away from active work areas. At a sprawling demolition site, an excavator pulls at the lower structure, and an entire concrete section begins coming down. Large concrete structures carry incredible internal weight and tension. When heavy machinery removes key supporting pillars, the entire building loses its architectural balance. The remaining structure cannot support its own massive weight and descends without warning. Gravity immediately influences the movement in a split second, bringing tons of solid concrete straight down. Demolish large buildings cautiously by dismantling them from the top down. Inside a busy manufacturing plant, a worker adjusts a flat steel bed before a descending orange frame lowers unexpectedly. Suspended heavy loads possess immense weight held only by mechanical tension. When large hoists lower rapidly, tons of solid metal descend without any warning. Avoiding this sudden downward movement depends entirely on timing and fortunate circumstances. A person has very little natural protection against strong gravitational forces. Secure active overhead work areas with bright physical barriers before lowering heavy materials. Operate lifting controls from a safe, distant remote station to help ensure complete safety. Verify the immediate work area remains entirely empty before shifting massive overhead loads. Inside a damp laundry area, a person reaches into an active washing machine when an electrical fault disrupts the entire task. Water transforms concrete floors into highly conductive surfaces. When an ungrounded appliance develops an internal fault, electrical current flows directly through the metal casing. Touching this active machine while standing in puddles completes a dangerous electrical circuit. The electrical current immediately overrides normal muscle control. This powerful energy transfer can force an involuntary collapse onto the hard ground, making it extremely difficult to safely move away from the appliance. Connect all household appliances to grounded power outlets. Dry wet floors completely before doing any daily laundry tasks. Disconnect the main power supply before reaching inside wet tubs. Beside a paved urban sidewalk, a technician climbs an extension ladder as the unsecured base slips across the smooth ground. Smooth paved surfaces offer incredibly low physical friction against plain metal feet. When a climbing angle exerts outward pressure on an unsecured base, the bottom edges lose their vital grip instantly. Gravity immediately influences the movement without warning. A falling person has very little natural protection against this sudden loss of support. The rapid descent results in a hard landing against the concrete, leaving very little time to regain stability safely. Anchor every base firmly against a solid structural block. Suspended high within an aging tree canopy, a climber finishes sawing a thick top section before the descending timber suddenly pulls down surrounding tangled branches. Interlocked canopy limbs create a hidden chain reaction. When a heavy top section drops, it catches nearby wood during its descent. This unpredictable movement transfers massive kinetic energy directly into the standing trunk. The resulting movement causes the remaining tree to sway forcefully in multiple directions. A person tied to this shaking structure can instantly lose physical balance. Clear smaller surrounding limbs entirely before attempting major cuts. Secure your body tightly with secondary lanyards against the solid core. Anticipate significant structural movement. Inside a spacious industrial facility, a technician works from a fully raised scissor lift when the entire machine starts tipping sideways. Extended mobile platforms hold a dangerously high center of physical gravity when raised. If the base rolls onto an uneven surface or shifts, all structural balance vanishes instantly. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the massive steel frame down in a rapid arc. A person standing high above has very little opportunity to regain stability or reach a secure hold. Lock every single base wheel securely before extending the platform. Retract the metal frame completely prior to moving across any workspace. Inspect the surrounding floor thoroughly. On a dirt access road, a mobile crane hoists a heavy tank onto a truck before the load snags, pulling the entire lifting machine sideways. Lifting heavy cargo requires a perfectly vertical center of gravity to maintain mechanical stability. When a suspended load catches a fixed barrier, the winch continues pulling, generating extreme lateral tension. This horizontal force completely overpowers the counterweights. The heavy base loses its ground connection instantly, causing the entire steel frame to tip into the dirt. A falling machine creates a large danger zone that poses a significant hazard to everything within its downward path. Guide suspended objects slowly using long tag lines. Stop the hoist motor immediately if cargo catches on any solid edge. Inside a busy textile plant, a colossal spool hangs above the factory floor before its lifting connection gives way. Overhead, lifting relies entirely on secure mechanical connections to hold immense weight. When a hoist attachment fails, gravity immediately influences the movement in a fraction of a second. The massive solid cylinder moves straight downward with overwhelming weight. A person standing directly below has very little time to move to a safer location. The extreme weight can trap anyone beneath the load against the rigid floor. Inspect all hoist connections meticulously before lifting heavy materials upward. Along a curved highway, a transport truck carries a towering stack of timber that begins leaning farther with every turn. Tall cargo completely changes how a large vehicle handles gradual bends. Centrifugal force pushes the high center of gravity outward. If the approach speed remains too fast, the load loses structural balance instantly. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling tons of dense wood down in a rapid arc. The massive weight creates a heavy landing that breaks binding chains, scattering large logs directly across the pavement. Calculate the weight distribution very closely before securing tall items. Reduce driving speed significantly when navigating curved roads. Above a busy city street, a towering metal framework pulls away from the building and collapses toward the road below. Temporary outdoor structures require absolute mechanical anchoring to withstand extreme physical forces. When a tall framework loses its vital connection to a solid building wall, structural balance vanishes instantly. Gravity immediately pulls the massive weight downward. The entire metal grid descends in a rapid cascade of dense steel. A falling structure of this incredible scale creates an extremely dangerous area across the open road. Fasten all elevated platforms directly into solid concrete walls. Clear the surrounding streets completely during severe weather conditions. Inspect every single vital structural connection. Above a busy urban sidewalk, a worker climbs a ladder placed on a scaffold as the unlocked wheels begin rolling underneath him. Stacking climbing equipment directly upon mobile platforms completely destroys fundamental physical stability. When base wheels shift on concrete, the elevated foundation moves instantly. This dangerous horizontal movement removes vital support beneath the leaning frame. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the upper worker downward in a rapid arc. A person descending from combined heights has very little natural protection against the forces involved, resulting in a hard landing on the ground. Lock every wheel firmly before stepping onto any rolling platform. Keep extension bases strictly on flat, solid ground rather than elevated structures. Inside an active metal yard, workers stand beside long steel beams when the raised mechanical boom breaks free overhead. Standing beneath suspended mechanical arms creates a hidden, high-risk overhead work area. When internal hydraulics fail, the heavy steel arm instantly loses all upward resistance. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the massive weight straight down in a fraction of a second. The resulting downward force carries extreme kinetic energy. A person focused on another task has very little time to respond safely. Establish clear physical boundaries around all elevated mechanical equipment. Move your daily tasks completely away from overhead loads. Inspect hydraulic support valves thoroughly. At a dusty loading site, a machine lifts a pallet of heavy blocks until the wooden base splits beneath the weight. Suspending heavy materials from a single central chain places extreme physical stress on a fragile wooden base. When the cargo shifts, the weak bottom supports cannot handle the uneven weight. The structure separates instantly, allowing gravity to pull the dense cargo straight down in a rapid descent. A falling group of solid items creates a large danger zone upon ground contact. Support heavy pallets from underneath using metal forks instead of top chains. Keep your body clear of active overhead work areas. Along a residential construction site, a builder steps onto an elevated wooden platform moments before the weathered board breaks apart. Old wooden planks lose internal strength when exposed to weather and repeated heavy loads. When a weakened board bears human weight, its internal fibers give way without warning. The structural separation happens instantly, removing all physical support beneath the worker's feet. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the person straight down through the open gap. A sudden descent from elevated levels can result in a hard landing, leaving very little opportunity to recover balance or move to a safer position. Inspect all wooden working platforms closely for internal cracks before use. At a busy public fuel station, a man rests on a large industrial tire when the pressure inside suddenly builds to a forceful level. Heavy industrial tires hold immense compressed energy within their thick rubber walls. When limits fail because of hidden internal weaknesses, the solid casing fails instantly. This trapped air escapes in a powerful burst of pressure that can easily affect surrounding metal compartments. Using a pressurized vessel as a resting place positions a person directly over an active pressure hazard. Treat all inflated industrial rubber strictly as dangerous pressure zones. Contain heavy objects completely inside strong steel safety cages during inflation. Inside a snowy courtyard, a man climbs high on a metal ladder while the icy surface sends the base sliding outward. Frozen surfaces destroy vital friction beneath leaning structures. When base feet meet slick ice, the angled frame loses ground grip instantly. Leaning weight pushes outward against the slippery bottom, forcing a sudden horizontal slide. As the base moves outward, gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the upper section straight down the solid wall. A person positioned high above loses all physical support in a split second. Inside a crowded supply depot, a worker drops a steel canister during loading, and the damaged container rockets across the area. Pressurized metal tubes hold immense trapped energy behind their thick walls. When a tall, heavy container strikes a hard floor, the fragile top valve separates instantly. This structural failure removes all internal containment in a split second. The escaping force transforms the solid steel shell into an uncontrollable high-speed object. A dense vapor cloud immediately spreads, greatly reducing visibility for everyone nearby, while the heavy metal cylinder continues moving unpredictably through the active workspace. Always cap every threaded nozzle tightly before manually shifting any pressurized container. Secure tall metal tubes firmly to rigid steel transport racks. Across a freezing outdoor steel yard, a worker approaches a suspended beam before the heavy load suddenly slips and descends into the snow. Suspending long metal loads requires precise balance and secure rigging. When cold weather compromises the straps, the physical support system loses stability instantly. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the dense steel downward in a rapid descent. This sudden mechanical failure creates a large danger zone against the frozen ground. A person standing near this active overhead work area has very little time to move to a safer location before the load reaches the surface. Remove all ice from heavy materials before attempting an overhead lift. Keep your physical distance from active overhead work areas. On an active highway expansion, a giant crawler crane suspends a massive concrete span until its steel treads pitch forward into the unstable dirt. Lifting extreme loads demands absolute balance across a wide base. When the suspended weight exceeds the counterweight capacity, the structural center of gravity shifts entirely beyond the front tracks. The rear treads lose their vital ground connection instantly. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the steel frame and payload downward together. A collapsing crane creates a large danger zone that can pose serious danger to anything beneath it. Calculate exact payload limits before attaching any heavy rigging. Position thick steel mats to distribute downward pressure evenly. Inside a cramped maintenance room, a technician adjusts a pressurized cylinder before the heavy vessel shoots forward. Pressurized cylinders contain immense internal force, locked tightly behind their metal walls. When structural seals weaken from stress or faulty repairs, the container cannot hold the rapidly rising pressure. The weakened shell gives way instantly, releasing a massive, uncontrolled burst of pressure. This sudden release sends solid steel parts outward at very high speed. Test all old metal casings strictly behind heavy steel protective barriers. Depressurize every single valve entirely before attempting basic manual repairs. Inside a glass fabrication workshop, workers brace an expanding stack of panels as the combined weight pushes beyond their control. Relying on human muscle alone to brace against accumulating heavy materials creates a highly unstable setup. As each new brittle layer is added, the total outward pressure increases dramatically. Human endurance has strict physical limits. Once the leaning weight surpasses natural strength, the heavy stack instantly shifts forward. The massive, rigid load can trap anyone standing directly in its path against nearby solid surfaces. Secure accumulating materials using solid mechanical racks. Eliminate the practice of acting as a human brace for heavy loads. Across a massive factory floor, a technician guides a suspended steel beam when the overhead hoist loses its grip. Overhead lifting systems carry immense mechanical tension that can fail instantly. When a cable gives way under extreme stress, the suspended metal loses all upward support. Gravity immediately influences the movement, pulling the massive load straight down with tremendous weight. A descending heavy structure creates a highly dangerous area upon reaching the ground. Human reflexes offer very little opportunity to move to a safer location during this sudden structural failure, leaving anyone standing below extremely vulnerable to the tremendous weight. Maintain a very wide physical boundary from active overhead lifting areas. Verify all lifting clamps carefully before elevating heavy materials. Inside a busy mechanic workshop, a worker leans over a heavy-duty tire moments before the stored pressure bursts free. Heavy industrial rubber holds immense compressed air, acting like a tightly compressed spring. When internal pressure exceeds the worn casing strength, the solid structure gives way almost instantly. This trapped energy escapes in a massive burst of pressure. The sudden release creates an extremely powerful physical force. A person leaning directly over this expanding area experiences the full kinetic energy. Enclose all massive wheels strictly inside rigid steel safety cages while adding pressurized air. Inside a busy glass workshop, workers lower a massive sheet toward a table before the unsupported center breaks apart. Large, brittle materials are extremely vulnerable when shifted from a vertical stance to a flat plane. Without solid center support, natural weight pulls the middle downward instantly. This bending creates intense stress that the thin structure cannot tolerate. The sheet gives way rapidly, separating into sharp pieces. A person holding the outer edges immediately loses control as the surface turns into falling debris, creating a sudden danger. Slide wide, fragile sheets onto flat surfaces using extra hands to spread the load evenly. Position supportive blocks under the middle section before tilting. Wear thick protective gloves to protect your hands. To keep learning from these important workplace safety lessons, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay aware, stay safe.